All right, well, welcome everybody to the Human Meat Machine Meetup. My name is Patty. I am sitting in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I am your host today. We have an exciting conversation coming with our guest, Dave Westgarth, who was incidentally part of our panel discussion last month. So, a lot of ties between what we talked about then and what we will be talking about today. So, a little bit about the mission of this meetup. This is a diverse, inclusive community of AI professionals, because at this stage of the game, we all need to be AI professionals, both technical and non-technical. And we're here to support you in your journey, wherever you may be. So, the beginning, the middle, and of course, the journey never ends, but we meet people where they are. And we want to talk to real boots on the ground people in these interviews to see what they're doing, how are they evolving, because they're just like us. I want to help people prepare for the fourth industrial revolution. And, honestly, it's here. It's been here for a while. So we're dealing with it. We're dealing with AI. We're going to talk about lots of cool things today related to that. But we want to have an open dialogue here. So we'll have a couple of demos. I have some guests lined up to be the guinea pigs, so to speak. And then, of course, we'll have questions and answers at the end. Well, welcome, Dave. Great to see you again. I am excited to chat with you as always. Tell us where you're located and a brief synopsis of your experience, how you got to where you are today.
That's great, and thanks very much for having me back again, Patty. It's great to be part of the Human Meat Machine group meetup again. And excited to dig into some of this a little bit more from the panel that we had. I'm based in the UK, as you can probably tell. I'm not from the south. I'm from the northeast, which is the best region in the UK. If you've watched Game of Thrones before, my accent might not be much of a problem. If you haven't, you might struggle. So please put your hand up if you can't understand me at any point in the call. But hopefully we've got some good ideas we can share and hopefully a couple of tools that people can take away and run with. So my current role is head of delivery at a Databricks consultancy called Unify. We are pushing, as every company seems to be at the minute, a lot of AI, ML, and agent-powered workflows for businesses looking to get more out of the data. Um, we are very much on the forefront of Databricks in and of itself. Databricks as a tool is sort of winning the battle at the moment on the data intelligence and the data platform front, so it's a good time to get into that ecosystem. But before this, I've done a variety of different roles. I've been a project manager, a scrum master, an agile delivery manager, and then all the way back when I first started, I actually joined the industry as an analyst and programmer, which was more than 10 years ago now. So I'm starting to date myself a little bit. I should probably stop giving that information away.
Yes. Well, and as we talked about last meetup during our panel, all of that um, expertise, if you will, is kind of tying together in a nice package for what you're doing now and what's coming for you next. So I want to bring up a little quote that you said to me a while back when we had a chat. You said something about we used to get paid for knowing things, right? We always hear the term knowledge worker. Now we get paid for figuring things out. So are we still knowledge workers? Are we not? What does this mean for us that in this space where we're trying to stay relevant in today's world?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. And I think that this is going to have pretty big repercussions, not just in the industry, but I think for even things like the education sector, because knowledge, sort of, especially trivial knowledge, or just knowing X equals Y, Y equals Z, that type of knowledge has been democratized in a huge way now, not just by search engines and technologies, but the AI layer that's come in, especially conversational generative AI, just makes that so much more accessible for people because now not only have you got the information, you can ask to have it explained to you like you're a 5-year-old, you can have it asked to explain to you in the guise of your favorite author or artist. So it's so much more accessible than it ever has been now. And I think that that's meaning that the sort of value of what you can bring as a professional now is less about what you know or less about how you know how things fit together and more about how you can creatively apply what you know to the problems that you're being asked to solve. And I talk about this a lot when people think about, well, especially Scrum and Agile people have a bit of an allergic reaction to project management jobs and project management roles. The way I look at it is a project manager and a scrum master, they aren't necessarily being asked to do the same job. A scrum master or a scrum approach will be good at some jobs. A project management approach will be good at others. Most of the jobs you're going to be asked to do are going to sit somewhere in between that, though. And that's where the figuring it out really comes into the fore. By having the skills from different areas, the different polarities, you can then bring those together and combine them in interesting ways to solve problems in the most efficient, effective, whatever way you want. And by broadening out your skill set and you learn as broadly as you can, you've got more levers to pull and more things to call on later, which I think we'll get into later in this call as well. But that's sort of where my head's at on that now.
And it's interesting that you brought up, I mean, I guess it's timely for me that you brought up the whole project management thing. So, not to go too off course, but this does piggyback on that. So I work in learning and development now. So I pivoted out of agile coaching, and just 2 days ago, I have to review content that we then pass on to the other employees to learn from,
Mhm.
right? So I'm reviewing LinkedIn Learning a lot, and I was watching a course on agile project management. And at
Hmm.
first, like my fingers and toes like curled up, and I'm like, oh. And then I'm like, no, I need to approach this with an open mind,
Yeah.
right? I've evolved, the industry has evolved, and um, I was like, wow, what this instructor is saying is making a lot of sense. And it talked about exactly what you just mentioned. So I wanted to share that, but kind of a good segue. Let's talk about certifications. That has become an annoying, dirty word in the Agile community, especially on LinkedIn. We don't have to rehash that, but those once signaled expertise. And as the years went on, right, people said, oh, the CSM doesn't mean anything. You mentioned to me that these are now like software licenses. And I know you're huge into certifications because you post about it all the time on LinkedIn. But can you tell us a little bit about like what is the value of all that learning that you're doing today with certifications? And how is that all compounding together to make you a more well-rounded individual?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think a lot of the negativity around certifications is because people thought they were once and done with them. Um, and then we'd see things like renewal periods come in, and this is particularly relevant for anyone working in technology or on AI focused certifications. The AI certifications you did last year are probably largely outdated by now. And I think the key to certifications, or the key to unlocking value from certifications, is to look at them as a continuous journey. I think a trap a lot of people fell into with Scrum Master certifications was they thought they'd get one under their belt and they've got a job for life. And that's sort of come home to roost in a lot of ways. What I try to do is use a current certification to then figure out what I like about that and then figure out where I can go deeper or where I can go to a parallel lane and continue developing. And especially the cloud-based certifications, they are really good at this. So AWS's Cloud Certified Practitioner, for example, gives you a really broad, it's sort of a mile wide and an inch deep view of everything AWS has to offer. And that's not incredibly valuable in and of itself, but what it is good for is orienting you in the environment, and you can then figure out which elements of this do you like, which do you want to learn more about, which do you not want to learn, which do you think might be a bit more effort than is worth the value. And you can sort of iteratively use more and more certifications and more learning journeys like that to plan out what you can do next. And I think this is one of the understated benefits of certifications. There's a lot that you can learn in your day-to-day role, but you're sort of at the mercy of the projects and the experiences that you get. The beauty of a certification with a syllabus is it's going to force you to look at everything, regardless of what your job asks you to do, regardless of the project you're working on. You're going to look at a really broad range of services, features, and technologies so you can really round out your knowledge and experience that way, and then use that to parlay into real deliveries, real applications, real projects. And that becomes a really nice repeating pattern that you can lean on by combining your study elements with your workplace experience elements, and one feeds the other after a certain point. Apologies if I've gone a little bit deeper than you wanted us to there, sorry.
No, that was a really, really good, complete answer. Yes, I am one of these continuous learning nerds. I've been doing it forever, and I know that the CSM and some of these other certifications, people became very dissatisfied with them. but we need to seek out courses and certifications that actually have exercises and practical application, not just sitting in front of a computer and listening to somebody talk, right? Because in one ear and out the other ear. So it's important when looking for learning opportunities to make sure that those types of things are there. You're not just absorbing content and forgetting it.
Yeah, that application step is the one that's been missing in a couple of the communities I'm part of because a pattern I saw a few years ago where people will get a Scrum certification, they think, great, I'm going to get a Scrum Master job now. They'd find out that's a lot tougher than they think. And the natural sort of panacea to that was, okay, I'll go into Kanban and expand my experience. And fair enough, they would learn about Kanban and they'd get a certification, but wouldn't actually apply that. They would still try and go in and do Scrum for Scrum's sake and sort of write off all of the investment they'd made to build up that Kanban knowledge. And I've seen this happen with other approaches like DevOps, like Lean, like project management. If you aren't going to take what you learn and apply it in the real world, you lose about half to three quarters of the value of what you've invested in there. The application is where the knowledge and the value to you as an individual contributor really comes.
Yeah. It's kind of like self-help books became really popular a number of years ago, and everybody would read like Brene Brown, or and I'm guilty of that too. But then it's like you close the book and like I don't have to change anything. So it's about taking that and actually going through the uncomfortable process of applying it. Um, but I want to kind of pivot to the topics that are really important to study, right? Because everybody's so confused. Do we learn this? Do we learn that? What is that going to become outdated before I even get to master it? Like it's it's so confusing for us. So from your vantage point, what are the three skills that people should focus on? And keeping in mind that you don't have to do all of it,
Yeah.
but these are like the three that you would recommend people go for in some way, shape, or form.
So one of my hot takes, especially in the technology industry at the minute, is there's three broad strands that are really driving everything, and those are data, cloud, and AI. All of those three are really what's driving the industry and driving a lot of consumption within wider industry outside of tech at the moment. The beauty of these three is they all fit together really nicely. Cloud enables you to have the platforms where you can store and process data now instead of having on-premise services. You can now move that into the cloud, reduce cost, increase your business agility, and increase your flexibility. That also allows you to have access to the latest and greatest in terms of AI-powered tooling. All of that's made available to you through cloud platform providers, so you don't need to make huge upfront investments to get AI tools that may or may not fit the job. And the AI can then help you to refine and upgrade your approach to that data management piece. So these three camps, I think, are the three, if especially if you're working within the technology sector, that you should be focused on. As you touched on, you don't particularly need to learn all of these, and they do bleed into each other quite a bit. There's not sort of hard and fast lines between these three categories, but having a good grounding in one of these and then developing a little bit of a specialism for yourself is really helpful. And with Scrum Masters and project managers I coach now, that's sort of one of the things that I talk to them about instead of thinking I want to be a really broad and generalized project manager who could come in and do any project. I would encourage people to think about how they brand themselves as a project manager, a Scrum Master, or whatever the case may be, that's focused on the technology and the problems associated with that technology that they want to solve. You'll see a lot of people doing this with the AI at the minute, and I don't think that's always for those type of reasons. I think it's because AI is hot. But I see a lot of people doing successful things where they think about things like I'm now a HR project manager and I specialize in HR information system deployments and getting the most out of those. Those are really the areas that I think where you could glean a lot of value technically, but also those are the areas that businesses are asking for now. So I think having a foot in one of those camps can really make your journey easier.
Yeah, and I was thinking um, back to this must have been at least a year ago. I was, out there going to meetups and watching, I don't know, special. We don't say subject matter experts anymore. We say subject matter specialists, at least where I work. They do
Yeah.
that. They're very intentional about it. Um, and one of the reasons why I pivoted into L&D, not only because I have that skill set in my past, but um, because they identified that as one of the places to shift your career because everybody needs to learn AI in companies nowadays. and there's a focus on focusing on upskilling employees. Not everywhere, but it's a hot topic now. So that's why I made the leap, and that that's something I would recommend if somebody has an educational background. So
I
um,
think you're right, and I think a nice change I'm seeing, and you can tell me whether this is the same in the States, but in the UK, the teams who are doing what you're doing aren't really focused on creating static content for people to go away and absorb. It's more about sparking a layer of curiosity in the workforce as a whole, so that they'll
yeah,
do it in a self-directed way instead of a
yep.
company-directed way.
Yeah, they're focusing on moving towards individualized learning and
Yeah,
using AI tools to it's kind of big brotherish, but it's the reality of the situation, understanding you as an employee and what skills that you need to boost, and then suggesting learnings based on that. So
yeah.
um, it's an interesting space to be in. Definitely is different when I started teaching all those years ago as a science teacher in a classroom of middle school kids. But I use a lot of those skills. So I'm excited to see where this takes me. But I want to pivot to something that I've been writing about on LinkedIn, like within the past week or so, being visible and doing your learning in public and pushing yourself out of your comfort zone to kind of interview for the invisible audience, as I call it. You don't know who's watching, but can you tell us about your experience with doing that? Because I know you're a content creator as well. Anthony, you're one. I mean, there are people on this call that have used this strategy, and it's becoming more and more valuable, especially in this day and age. How do you truly stand out
It's an interesting
in
one.
that sea of whatever, right?
Yeah, yeah. So when I think about sort of content creation, especially on LinkedIn, I think it's helpful to think about what your pillars are going to be. And one of my pillars is, for anyone that's connected to me, is lifelong learning. And I think a really nice thing you can do with your learning is use that as a storytelling sort of lever or mechanism. So not only talk about, okay, great, I got this new certificate, you could then think about, okay, based on the certificate I've picked up, these are the experiments I want to run in my role in the next few weeks. You can then report back on those, talk about the results, the iterations that you want to make. And all of this serves to create a couple of good things. I think it's very easy to say that you're a lifelong learner in an interview. If you're talking about that regularly on a platform like LinkedIn, you're now evidencing it, which makes it easier for you to have credibility in an interview and for HR and hiring managers to see that you're invested in your industry and you take your development seriously, which is good. And second, I think it helps instead of you going out and being on the hunt, pursuing the jobs as often as you can, you just talked about it there, sort of play into the gallery a little bit, that silent majority. And now instead of you going out and doing all the legwork and the hunting, you turn your profile into a bit of a lead magnet. People are naturally going to become more attracted to you. They'll get used to seeing your name in the feed and they'll get used to seeing you upskilling yourself, trying new things, talking about what works, talking about what doesn't. And I think that those are all really good things to have sort of going for you. It's one of the things I try and coach people about on LinkedIn, especially when you look at the numbers for things like likes, comments, impressions. You really need to sort of try and ignore those as best you can. What's more important is the body of evidence that you build up over time. It would be great if you could get a viral post once a week, but it's not necessarily the attention that you want. The attention you want over the life of your career is going to be from a handful of good companies that you want to go and do good work for. And virality might get you in front of one or two, but that consistent approach and telling your story and what you're good at and what you care about is a more consistent and positive strategy for getting those companies into your purview, I would say.
Yeah, as I like to frame it, how do people know who you are unless you tell them?
Yeah.
And you have to really push yourself out of your comfort zone to put yourself in a public space and take a risk every single day you put that post up because you never know what the response is going to be. And as we have all talked previously, the Agile community is very combative, if you want to use that type of term. But it helps you develop a thicker skin. It helps you advocate for yourself And I have found that that skill is something that has become ingrained in me, that I go and I take that into my job. So when I see people in my team, my peers sitting and saying nothing, I open my mouth and I raise my hand and I ask the question that nobody is wanting to ask. And it's
Yeah.
because of LinkedIn and putting myself out there every single darn day, despite the fact that I'm scared, nervous, um, people will clap me back, like whatever it is. And Anthony's laughing. Um, because it's a journey, but it develops you in a way that you never expect. So today's a good day to start. Tomorrow's the next best day, but you got to get started.
Yeah. And I see a lot of people really going at all guns blazing for a fortnight and then come off the peel.
Yep.
I would say pace yourself. You don't need to go in there thinking I need to do 3 posts a day every day from now on. Once a week is more than enough. I think you talked about this in your newsletter recently. If you're posting once a week, you're in the top 1% of posters immediately. So don't feel like you need to go in there and hammer it from day one. You can build up slowly, you can try new things. And in a lot of ways, this is the beauty of being new on this journey or having a small following. You can try things that if you had a big following, you would get absolutely torched for and get away with it. And again, Anthony's laughing. I'm sure he's seen me get torched every now and then. So it happens to the best of us. Don't take it personally, would be my advice.
Yeah, it's hard not to get angry at like this random stranger on the other side of the planet, like slapping you around on LinkedIn. It's like, I don't know that person. Like, they should not set my day off, right? And you have to close your laptop and move on, but it is not easy. All right, well, let's turn our attention to AI agents. That's like the topic of the moment, right? Um, there's, and I talk about this all the time in my newsletter and on LinkedIn. There's this fear, this palpable fear that we're all going to be replaced by robots. Um, I, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but let's talk about, like, let's say we're not going to be replaced by robots.
Yeah,
How would you suggest people think of AI to change their mindset around that fear-based narrative?
I think. Well, I think a lot of things on AI. I do. So I'll preface this. I'm an AI supporter. I'm an AI advocate, but I'm about to tear it down a little bit. Anyone who spent any time with AI, more than 5 minutes or so, you can probably fairly quickly work out it's not as clever as you think it is. And this is why I advocate to people to develop a bit more of a technical understanding of what AI is, because ultimately it's a pattern matching tool. It's doing that in a lot of different ways with things like graph databases, with RAG solutions. But ultimately, it's looking at your question and trying to give you something back that sort of matches the pattern of that and sounds plausible. It doesn't know what it's telling you. It doesn't know if it's true or not. It doesn't know if it's good or not. It's just trying to give you something back and have a bit of a game of verbal ping pong with you. With that being said, though, it can do a lot of good things when you tightly bound it and tightly scope it. And I think that this is where agents are really going to start to come into their own. And I think this is really where we can take a lot of lessons from sort of true core old-fashioned engineering, not necessarily software engineering, but more old school engineering, where not only would engineers be asked to fix a problem, they would have to then develop the tools, the apparatus, the measurements to fix that problem. And I think AI agents is going to democratize that for everyone. You can think about the problems that you need to solve in your role as a teacher, a HR professional, an L&D coach, an agilist, a project manager. And agents give you a really easy, natural language way to start refining and building your own tools to help you get that job done in a more efficient or a more effective way. The key thing, as I say, is that tightly bounded scope. The biggest mistake I see people making with AI agents at the minute is trying to offload a huge portion of their role. And I think that that should give you, while that's disappointing that the agent can't do it, that should give you a lot of confidence and relieve a lot of the anxiety around sort of the role displacement stuff. AI is pretty good. It's nowhere near enough on its own, and it's really going to serve as more of an augmentation than a replacement, and using it to develop these tools that allow you to do more, allow you to become more versatile and more effective at different things, I think ultimately it'll make you more and more powerful as an individual contributor. And I think that's what people should be excited about when they think about AI.
Yeah, I always have to check myself and, because you read the headlines and every day it's like it's whiplash, right? AI is going to destroy us. AI is going to,
Yeah.
help us reach utopia. And the answer is always somewhere in the middle. And I always say, if it's going to destroy us, we can't control that anyway. We might as well live our lives happy and exploring and being creative and doing what we can in the time we have than being afraid that the world is going to blow up tomorrow or next year or everybody's going to be unemployed in 2 years. I mean, we can't control that anyway.
Yeah,
So might as well
you
think
can
positive.
yeah, you can take the line of thinking on AI and agents all the way back to the invention of books. People thought inventing books would be the end of sort of held knowledge, and knowledge would erode more quickly in the human brain. There's a lot of old Greek philosophers who were just staunchly against using books, and I think this is just sort of part of the natural discussion and cycle that every technology wave goes through. I don't think this is particularly unique to AI in and of itself.
Yeah, yeah. And you always have to remind yourself that the people who are hyping this have something to sell you. So we'll just leave it there. But we're going to turn our attention to our demos. You're not trying to sell anybody anything today. So we're
No,
just going to be putting out something for the audience to test. We're going to see if it works or doesn't work. We're going to get some feedback and see, you know, what it's like to build an agent and test an agent, especially if you have no knowledge of where to start.
yeah,
So, Dave, I'm going to have you share your screen. Go ahead
perfect.
and put up the content agent.
Excellent.
Now, we've talked a lot about content creation and, writer's block is often a place to look at, how can I get myself over this hump? Um, and we have somebody that's going to be our guinea pig here to try this out. So, why don't you explain to us, Dave, a little bit about, let's just look at the first bubble there because that's the one we're going to focus on today. And
Cool.
then Ruth, I'm going to have you put your resume or information in the chat, and that way Dave can pull it up and copy and paste it into the input there.
So I'll just set the scene a little bit while I wait for that to come through. So what I've done here is created a custom GPT. And depending on, well, you may or may not know a lot about agents. There's a lot of different types, and this is a fairly basic reflex agent. In other words, I give it something, it gives me something back, a bit like a knee-jerk reaction. So what I'm going to do with this one is use it to help me generate some ideas for what I could talk about on LinkedIn, what I could post about in public, how I could learn a little bit more in public. I'm looking in the chat. I can't see your CV there, but I can just go for it if you want. Totally up to you.
Yeah, Ruth, are you out there?
I tell you what, I'll
Okay.
go for it just to show this off
Yeah,
a
give
little bit.
me a
So
minute. Give me a minute.
Oh, sure. Okay.
let me run this first one and then we'll have a second pass. So
Okay.
this agent's a reflex agent, quite basic, but what it'll do is it'll corral the conversation slightly to get what it needs from you, and then it'll do the job I've asked it to do. So let's start by saying something like, what could I post about next week on LinkedIn? And if this behaves, it should ask me a little bit about myself. So it should say, who are you? What do you do? What do you care about? This type of stuff. Yep, so to tailor ideas, what's your current role or your industry? So I'll start filling these in. So let's say I'm a project manager for a data firm. Uh, Target audience is customers and hiring orgs. Three would be build a following and position myself as a subject matter expert. Sorry, I know you don't like that word, Patty, but
It's okay.
it jumps to mind. And then four, anything you're currently working on. So I could say something like looking for a new job and pursuing new industry qualifications. So what I'm doing here is what's called context engineering. I'm giving the AI a feel for who I am, what I do, giving it a little bit more information to tweak and sort of hone in its approach. What you do when you do this, and it's the same with RAG solutions for anyone who knows what that means, I'm turning a closed book exam where I ask a very general AI to do something very specific into an open book exam where it's now got things to refer back to when it's answering the questions. And this sort of context engineering or giving more context to the AI helps it to be more relevant to the problems that you wanted to solve. What I'll do, I'll hit it with this now, and it should do the job I've asked it to do and give me something useful. So confirming back who I am, it's going to create a table. So it's going to define two axes for me. It's going to give me some content formats. It's given me 12 to pick from there: actionable, motivational, X versus Y, present versus future, case studies. So lots of variety in the type of stuff I could do. And then 5 core topics for me. We can talk about bridging data and business value. That's top of mind for a lot of data customers at the moment. Project leadership in a data-driven world. Again, good one for project managers. Upskilling and career growth in data careers. AI automation, the future of project management. Building trust and clarity in data projects. None of these are perfect, but these are pretty good starters for 10. And then for some reason, it's not rendering this correctly, but it's created there a markdown table that should have a ton of projects for me to pick from. So let me just tell it to render the table correctly. I'm not sure why the markdown isn't rendering correctly, but the important thing, so the important example I'm trying to show here is very quickly I've been able to use an AI to get more than 50 ideas for content topics that I can post about now in the next week or so. And a really nice sort of wrinkle to this, or a really nice extension that you can do is I've created an agent here to handle the ideation step, but there's a few different steps I could take care of after that. I could take care of steps like prioritization or selecting the right topics to talk about. And I could tell the agent what are the ones I want to talk about most this week, what's the most pressing goal I've got to meet this week to give it more context around that. A nice thing I've seen people start to do now is chain agents as well. You'll see along the top line there, I've got Perplexity open. You can use Perplexity's template agent here to do a lot of research, which is backed by relevant links and relevant citations. This is really good for giving some weight and authority to your generated ideas. So you could take an idea from this agent, give it to the Perplexity research agent, and now say, give me some emerging or latest research on this that I can talk about. That'll give you more opinion pieces to start building some credibility. And then you can even take that after you've done your ideation and your prioritization, backing that with some research. You can take that into a better writing tool or a better writing agent, like something from Claude. And Claude's really good at tidying up, making it into human feeling language, more emotive language, and more engaging stuff that you can post about. So that covers off the content matrix agent I wanted to walk through. Ruth,
Okay.
have you got your CV there available for me to give it a whirl, or is that not in there?
So I uploaded it to Google Drive.
Perfect.
This is why technology is so great, right? Like we're figuring out a way around our challenge here. So I put the link in the chat, Dave, so you can go ahead
Excellent.
and pick that link up. Do
Great.
whatever you need to do. The goal is to be able to upload somebody's resume or CV and see what topics they might be subject matter specialists on and generate this content matrix for those topics. So it gives you a really great starting point. And then, of course, you can look at it and say, no, I don't want to write about this, or um, I'd rather write about this. So you can tweak it. But let's see what it does with Ruth's resume. And then, Ruth, you can tell us if this is like on the mark or like way off base.
Fingers crossed it'll be on the mark. Here we go.
Yes.
Let me paste in Ruth's CV and let's give this a whirl. Okay, so it's telling me you've got a foundation in agile delivery, cross-functional collaboration, user-centered design. It's asking for a few different things. I'll plug these gaps now. So let's say audience focus, we are looking for hiring organizations. Let's say career goals, deepen my experience in a more senior role. Content tone preference, let's say something engaging and thoughtful. And then any special themes or industries, let's say none. Let's keep it quite broad for now. And then we should get a matrix that's more customized to you, Ruth. So x-axis, we've got the content types that we're going to get. Good spread in there. 5 tailored content topics from Scrum to strategy, building trust across teams, prioritization under pressure, customer voice in every sprint, continuous improvement in action. Those sound about right from what it's telling me? Again, ChatGPT must be on the blink with its markdown. It's not rendering tables correctly at the minute, but this looks pretty good as a starter for 10 to me. Ruth, I suppose, is this accurate so far? And what is it that you would like to talk about, or what would you like to develop your post around on LinkedIn, for example?
I'd like to talk more on product management because it is a broader view of what I do.
Cool. So let's do Control F on product. So we've got topics in there like how to say no gracefully as a product owner, why delivering faster can hurt your product, what's the hardest no you've ever had to say in product work, how intelligent tools are changing product ownership. So we've got a few ideas in there that straight away you could take away and you could start building on. So for example, we could take what's the hardest no you've had to say in product work. You could then take that and say, I like this idea. Can you give me three perspectives to work with? And then we can go very quickly drilling down from a very broad version of who you are and what you do to a lot of different ideas on what you could talk about. And now we're getting closer and closer to a post that we can either take away and refine or something that we can combine with other pieces that we put together to start building out a library of posts that you can call on later. And I like to talk about different perspectives because we can get a different viewpoint. And one thing you'll see a lot of LinkedIn sort of coaches talk about is solving the same problem more than one way. So we could have a strategic perspective on Monday of how to say no in product management. We could then have a more human perspective on Wednesday, and then we would close the week with a growth perspective on Friday. So very quickly you could have a week's worth of content on a topic that you care about from 3 or 4 different viewpoints that you can then personalize and make your own. And I think that this is a really nice way to start really getting the wheels turning on, posting more regularly, building that visibility, but turning yourself into more of a lead magnet than going out and chasing jobs on your own, putting all the effort in yourself. Patty, I'll just come back to you because I think you're on mute. But how does that
Yeah,
look for
yeah,
the first
yeah.
one?
I do want to be conscious of our time, but yes, if this was rendering in Markdown, right, it gives you a grid.
Yeah,
So you can read the ideas across and you can read the ideas down and you can kind of figure out, okay, this is what I want to talk about. This is how I want to talk about it. And then you find where your finger meets and like that's your post topic. This is a way to help you generate lots and lots of ideas. It gives you a month's worth of content. And then you can just start using ChatGPT to flesh out those posts. And like I do, put them in an auto scheduler. So I use Publer, but there's other ones out there. So you can get those scheduled so you're not doing them at the last minute, because I've been in that position before where it's like you're doing it the morning of and it's so stressful.
yeah,
And all you that are content creators, you know, right? You want to get this done like a week ahead of time so it's like you're not stressed out. Well, let's move on to the other one. In
great.
the interest of time, Ruth, I hope that gave you some ideas to get you going. You can even create your own agent. All you have to do is figure out what is it that I want this assistant to actually do. And that's where like the critical thinking comes in. You have to figure out, how do I tell this thing to do what I want it to do? And you have to iterate. And it takes a while to figure it out, but eventually your little buddy does exactly what you want it to do. Okay, so Dave has shared it there. So feel free, folks, to check this content matrix out. And remember, that's only one prompt on the total of 4 there. So there's a whole bunch of other different options for you to look at with this particular custom GPT.
Yeah.
All right, so let's shift to the next one. Kurt, I'm going to ask, are you ready?
I believe so, Patty. I took the information that you gave me and just plugged it right into.
Well, let me give it a spin for you then, Kurt. What is it you wanted to learn about? What did you want to develop in? What skills were you looking to add to your repertoire?
It was an AI data. It was
Great.
an AI data 6-week plan. Either the 3 levels for beginner, intermediate, or skilled.
Perfect. So what I've done here is I've said just what you've said. I want to develop my data skills. Where do I start? Let's take a little bit about you. So your current background, who are you? What do you do? What can I tell the AI about you, Kurt?
So I classed in that I was wanting to start a new career in AI as a beginner.
Okay, so let's say I'm a new career transfer looking to crack AI and data. Your
Yeah,
goal level. So are we looking at beginner? Are we looking at
yeah,
something a little more
beginner.
intermediate? Perfect.
Yeah, beginner.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay, the skill
committing.
level.
Yeah, committing 3 hours a week to the
Okay.
goal of learning. Low cost budget.
Any preferred learning style? Anything that you like?
Uh,
Visual,
yeah,
audio?
doing slash experimenting.
Perfect. That is the correct answer, by the way. And let's say low budget, free options. Okay, so we've asked for a data and AI learning plan. We've given a little bit more about Kurt, and now what we'll get is a really structured response of the data skill map. So what it's given you here are the core pillars that you should start to think about to develop your AI knowledge. Things like data literacy and thinking with data. Python is the language of choice in AI, data analysis and visualization, machine learning, AI application. Those are really good to
That's
start
great.
with. It'll then give you a week by week plan. So week 1, we can talk about the data and AI landscape. Week 2, basic Python. Week 3, explore data with pandas. Continuing on, we get a resource list at the bottom with books that are free and low cost. It'll also give you dynamic links to these. ChatGPT is actually getting a lot better at not hallucinating these now, so these links should all take you to the relevant stuff. We've got courses, YouTube videos, and free tools as well, which should all be helpful. And then practice or project ideas with your application experimentation focus. This section will probably be really useful. And the bit I really like about this learning agent is this bit at the bottom, the reflection questions. So you can do a little bit of self-coaching, or you can use the AI to coach you a little bit in your journey and make sure that you're really progressing the way you want to. What kind of data problems am I most drawn to? How comfortable do I feel interpreting charts and models now? What AI applications could make my work or daily life easier? These are the kind of prompts that really help you think about where you want your learning journey to go next. And again, a little bit of a plug for learning in public at the bottom. Things that you could talk about in public forums like LinkedIn, like other places. Lots of good stuff in there to give you a really broad range to start with, and then you can continue to drill. So let's say, for example, Kurt, you looked at one of these this week, for example, machine learning you really liked. You could then go in and say, okay, can we take ML a level deeper? And then it should generate another one that drills down again for you. So you can see how this becomes a bit of a recursive loop for you. You can learn a lot at a broad range, fairly basic, and then drill into the areas that you care about as you continue to develop yourself and learn more. I hope you got something similar to that, Kurt. Apologies, I couldn't see it in the chat, but I hope that this is sort of similar broadly to what you got.
Yeah, no, it was, and it did go. It took a deep dive because I took it a little deeper and it printed out some other information.
Yeah, and you can put current your current resume in there. You can say, I've already taken coursework on these topics, so it gets a better idea of where to start and maybe what gaps that might exist that you can fill in.
But these are two fairly low touch, fairly low cognitive load ways to bring agents into your workflow for things like content creation and learning. The only other thing I wanted to touch on, and I'll make this super quick, is you'll also see agents showing up more and more in the tools that you use every day. Miro, for example, are really going all in on what they call sidekicks now, and sidekicks is just another branding word for agents. But I've played around with making a sidekick for generating themed retrospectives. We've got sidekicks that can do roadmap strategy, that can develop product visions. These are not going to be able to replace you as an individual contributor as a whole, but these are really good for helping you to perform a specific task within the remit of your role more quickly, giving you a broader range of ideas to work with, or really helping you get to something more polished a little bit quicker. So again, I think you'll see these showing up more and more. And I think the more that you can take a handle on developing these tools for yourself, the more you'll be able to use the off-the-shelf ones more effectively as well. So I really encourage everyone to get stuck in and give them a try for yourself and see what you can come up with. I think there's a lot of good things waiting for you.
Well, thank you for those demos. I know they were super quick, but people now have access to those agents and they can start playing with them themselves. And hopefully we'll have some new content creators out there dipping their toe in the water with us. You know, all of us that are kind of like in this group, and a lot of them were on the panel last month. You know, we've developed this little community and we support each other and we like each other's content and we put comments on it. And that's so important because you can't do this alone. You know, if you're on an island by yourself, you'll give up very quickly, just to be honest. But yeah, I mean, it's like kind of like if you give, people will give back. So thank you, Dave, so much for sharing all of your knowledge. We have a couple of minutes here for questions if anybody wants to jump in.
Is anyone else using AI in different ways, I suppose? Because this is just what I think, but I could well be wrong. I've been wrong before, I'm sure I'll be wrong again.
I'm not, but I do have just a general question for you, Dave.
Okay.
If if you've even heard or heard about some new developments with AI, it's the AGI. Are
Mhm.
you anywhere familiar with the artificial general intelligence?
Yes. I feel like it's been 6 months away for 3 years now. I'm not convinced the current tools we have. This is why I encourage people to learn more about LLMs at a technical level. When you understand how they're working at a technical level, they're really not AI in the way that you probably think they are, and they're probably not as smart as you give them credit for. They're just very good at holding up smoke and mirrors and giving a show.
Yeah, I'm just curious.
I think we've got a long way to go before we get to AGI, to be perfectly honest. I'd love to see it in my lifetime, but I couldn't say for definite we'll get there. Sorry,
You're
Ruth.
definitely going to see it because AI growth is really happening fast. So I believe it's going to happen in the next 10 years, I believe. Yeah,
How
I
much are
had
you prepared to bet on that, Ruth? Because I might take that bet.
I have a question. Yeah, about what you said when you mentioned branding yourself and focusing on a particular niche or field. I want to know, do you advise someone that is still early in their career to do that?
I would say yes. But if you're early in your career and you don't have a lot of pre-existing experience to lean on, I would say be prepared to move off that if you find it's not successful. Because when you're early in your career, you're going to go through a lot of changes come what may. So be prepared to have 2 or 3 areas that you care about that you'd like to work in and talk about that as your specialization, but don't be as tightly wedded to it as you may have if you've got 10 or 15 years experience in an area. And Anthony, who's on the call, is a shining example of this. I think he's reinvented himself about a dozen times in the time I've known him, and he seems to turn his hand to anything and make it a success. So 7 times, there we go. Oh, 8, sorry.
Yeah, I think we're moving into a world where it's more about skills and how can you package your skills to fit, um, you know, I don't want to say a role, maybe talk about it more like what's the company's problem that they need solved? How do you package your skills and present yourself as a solution to that? Rather than saying, I want to become a scrum master at all costs.
Yeah.
Figure out what are a few things that you can do based on your skill set and then pursue all at the same time. But if you're talking about all of those, like you said, content pillars, you'll have different people attracted to different things, and you might get completely different opportunities from different places. So don't feel like you have to be married to something because I think those days are long gone. That was like our parents' generation.
Long gone.
Or maybe like some of our parents' generation.
Just had a comment to say
Sure.
that this has been great. And I think, Dave, I think you need to do more of this because I really think that people need to start opening up their minds to not just a specific role, like Patty was saying, is it comes down to what problem is the company trying to solve. And so you can take all of the skills that you've accumulated in your entire career journey and use it to your advantage, or develop some new skills that tack on to the skills that you already have.
No, I totally agree. And as I said, you're a great example of this because you've got a very diverse skill pool to call on now, which enables you to turn your hand to almost any problem. So I think you're a really good use case on doing that and building on iteratively more and more stuff so you can expand the surface area of problems you can solve. So yeah, I think it's the way the market and jobs are going to be in the future. I think there'll be less and less formal roles and more about people coming in as creative problem solvers, which is exciting for us, I hope.
Yeah.
I actually I had no idea that I would even end up here. For those of you who don't know, I've gone through 7 career changes, ranging from fashion designer, systems administrator, DevOps engineer, cloud trainer, agile coach and scrum master, emotional intelligence coach, and now I'm building applications using AI. So what did I get from all of that? Well, I know how to run systems. I know how to architect them. Very good at security. I know how to tell people the difficult stuff and articulate it in a way that they can understand. And I use my fashion background to design UX that actually works. And the same thing goes with emotional intelligence. When they land on the application, how do they feel about it? Do they feel good? Am I being emotionally aware of what the customer really wants? So, and then on top of that, product management, I learned that being an agile coach. So taking all of those skills, as you can see, came in really handy.
100%.
He's forgotten his most important job, Patty, pizza chef
I
extraordinaire.
know, right? That one too. Well, all right, folks. I mean, we're over time. I'm sure some of us have to go to meetings and such. So thank you, Ray. This
Thank
has
you,
been
guys.
fantastic. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Of
Thanks,
course,
everyone.
this recording will be cleaned up. I'll send it out so you can watch it again. And to all those that couldn't make it, they'll get to see it too. And I will see you all next time. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday.
Thank you.